For the past 2 years, Jocko Fuel has been the only supplement I've consumed. It's helped me stay in shape now that my competitive career is finished. If you've been waiting to try Jocko, the wait is over. Jocko has now teamed with Walmart, bringing clean fuel to the entire nation. Jocko Fuel is loaded with all the good stuff and none of the bad. And I'm talking no added sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and absolutely no gray area or banned substances. Just pure, clean fuel to power your performances. Jocko Fuel is now available in Walmart nationwide. Products available at your local Walmart are Jocko Malt, ready to drink, Jocko Malt powder, and Jocko pre-workout. How convenient. Guys, the time is now. Consider trying some of my favorites like Jocko Go and Jocko Hydrate. You can even do it online. Use code Chael30 at JockoFuel.com or just stop by your local Walmart and get your hands on some Jocko ASAP. Don't wait, might not last. Fuel up with Jocko Fuel and crush your goals. Now there's no excuse for not having clean fuel. Guys, I want you to go get Jocko Fuel today at Walmart. Do you think Sterling and Weidman, former teammates, former world champions, being on the undercard is right? Or should you have an attitude like Sterling's opponent that says, I get paid the same, I'll have eyeballs on me, job's the same, put me wherever you want. Right now, it's not as easy as you might think. It's really not. First off, the undercard is wildly misunderstood. I can remember back in the Fox days, and they're true still with the ESPN days, that the main event of the undercard, the main event, is the one that had more eyes the entire night. Not everybody that was watching that switched over to the pay-per-view. You understand that. But there was also times we would go on Facebook. The early prelims were playing on Facebook, and they would do crazy numbers. They would do these really ridiculous numbers, and it didn't matter. You couldn't get supported. It was looked at differently. It was not sought after. Nobody ever called for a main event prelim spot. Nobody ever called for put me on Facebook. And the trickle up also was not there. Sponsors by example. Now it's very uniform, and I had left the UFC just before the Reebok deal came in. So it to Reebok, and then it went to what, guys? Venom, and that's where we still are, I believe. But there used to be all kinds of sponsors. I was sponsored by a company called Tap Out, and it was very specific. We would have actual contracts. But that contract and the escalation within the contract would have an entire legal paragraph based on what your placement was. And so even if you tried to go back to Tap Out and go, no, wait a minute. There's a really hard fight that's very heavily promoted. It's being used in a different way, right? Instead of for the pay-per-view needle, it's being used for the live gate, but here's where it is. Everyone wants to see it. It did not matter. There was no explanation that you could give and have it matter. So I don't make believe that it does not. I have argued to the point that I have pled, scolded, condescended, begged fighters to understand the only thing that matters is your card placement. That is the only thing that matters. Whether you have a black belt or a purple belt does not equate to the importance of a card placement. Whether you have a ranking in the top 10 or you're still looking to break in is not near as important in prize fighting. I mean, what you're doing it for is within the name. It is not sell out arenas fighting. It is not get sponsorship fighting. It is not have a good time fighting. It's prize fighting. And your ranking does not matter in conjunction with your card placement. You would like a beautiful place on the card more than anything else or any amount of articles they could ever write about you. And I got to jump around on this just a little bit, but if you can save that thought and allow me to divulge Submission Underground. Do you guys remember when we were doing Submission Underground? We had this great grappling event going on. Everybody from Jon Jones to Gordon Ryan coming out and competing in this. We got a very tough lesson from the jiu-jitsu community, and this was a rule we did not know. Nobody had ever mentioned this. That if you have a black belt, for example, and that's your third match of the night, you cannot have a brown belt closer to the main event. It is disrespectful. There was even in Portland a little mini boycott of the event because a black belt was early in the night and a purple belt was later in the evening. The purple belt also happened to be a known established name that fought in something called the UFC at the time. But the community was very serious about that. That was one of these rules that we just didn't know. Now, I want you to save that thought because the belt system in martial arts is very fascinating to me in that we have a number of people with a gold belt which cannot be given away. There is no amount of dues that you can pay, that your father can pay for signing you up at the local gym that can get you a gold belt. That has to be won. And there's a number of people who have won a gold belt that do not and never did achieve a black belt. So it's a very interesting policy. And I think that we all see where that makes sense. And it has never even come into MMA. The reason it's never come into MMA is the reason I never knew it about grappling. I didn't know that was a thing anywhere. In MMA, we all accept that the current fighters that we want to see the most, we're looking at it like chess, right? It's always chess, where if they win here, what that moves them to. What a great night here moves them to. And I want to use Weidman, I want to use Aljo, because, and you know what, guys, as I'm talking to you, I'm also talking to myself. I don't like this. I know Aljo personally, and I also know you guys would love him if you ever met him personally. But I've never even heard a rumor that behind the scenes, he's difficult, just to use a simple word. I've never even heard that. And I do feel, though, he's being treated as a guy that behind the scenes is difficult. Let me give you a great example. If you're a world champion at a weight class and you leave that weight class, you got to win one fight at your new weight class and then you qualify for a world title fight. Now, you're not guaranteed to get it. I'm just talking historically speaking, if you win one fight, you will then be fighting for a world championship. And it's not usually like this big conversation. It's almost a foregone conclusion. A fine example would be Kamaru Usman. He left 170, he goes up to 85 against Chimaev, but it was automatically named number one contenders match. Had he won that, he would have gone and fought for a belt. Or how about Alex Pereira? Alex Pereira is at 185 pounds, loses that belt, moves to 205, does one stop there against Jan Blachowicz, goes on to a world championship. And Aljo not only did that, I'm going back to 300 with Calvin. That was a wildly hard and well-done fight that really didn't even get the credit and didn't even start a conversation for a world title fight. And then he did another, and now he's scheduled to do yet another, and it's on an undercard. And Aljo is different from Weidman. I believe this to be Weidman's last fight. Weidman has hinted at that. I don't want to speak for him, but I'm very confident in telling you this is Weidman's last fight. Now, if you understand that it's his last fight and you understand the magnitude of the card and the card placement also has to do with where you go from here. Regardless of the performance or outcome by Weidman, he is not going anywhere from here. And when we understand that, we can understand where he would be earlier in the evening. But it still does make you a little bit curious. I mean, it does come back to what the jiu-jitsu community taught me. And you've got guys with gold belts. There's not a lot of former world champions floating around the division. There's just not. Getting to a world title is hard enough. Getting to a world title and then reclimbing and trying to stay at it, being one of the guys, it's very rare. And we've got two guys with gold belts, and they're early in the evening. And if you wonder why that is, I think a lot of people do wonder. If you wonder why it is, I'm attempting to answer you. The way it's looked at is not just your popularity and how sought after your fight is right in this moment. It also has to do with where potentially could you go from here. And Dana White made a brand promise in 2001, and not very many people thought, Vince McMahon included, not very many people thought that Dana could keep the promise. And Dana's promise was the only people that fight here are champions and athletes who are going to be champions. The moment you prove there is not a path for you to be a champion, you no longer fight here. And I'm just bringing this to your attention. Like, there's not a conspiracy. This doesn't mean anybody's done anything wrong. It doesn't even mean that they've fallen out. They're no longer liked with the company. This is the way that it's always been. We're seeing it twice in one night. Great reason to watch the prelims. But as much as it's on brand, I will share for you the notion that Aljo cannot reclaim a world championship still. The notion and the reality of how small the top guys, right? The pool is very small for top guys to contest for world titles at 145 pounds are. It's to the point that we're even starting to do rematches already. Speaks to the importance of new blood, for one, but should speak to the value of having a former champion within the division. And Aljo's got a very tough draw here. I want you just to keep your eyes on it at a minimum. Right, this is a guy headlining, selling out arenas as a main event for the world title, including the night where he passed the title on to the next crew, Sean O'Malley. He was still the last to walk, and it was still a sold-out house. He still matters. And we'll play the game, we'll play the cards that we're dealt. But there is a sportsmanship to it, which means if Aljo does well, let's at a minimum agree as a community we're going to revisit this card placement for the next one.